And we are back on the Pick Six podcast. I usually have DPZ do the intro, but I'm so excited because I feel like we haven't done one in a year. Dad jokes on fleek. It has been a year. Has it been 2 weeks? Has it been 2 weeks? Or a week and a half?
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks, but technically this is the first one of the new year.
I feel like I barely know you. I reached out. I was like, damn, I got to get back in touch with DPZ and figure out what's going on.
I know. And I've read in some of the comment section in our last video, I'm being too negative and I'm making people sad. So I'm sorry. I don't want to make people sad. I'm going to work really hard today to not make people sad. I hear you loud and clear out there, friends. Because you know what? At the end of the day, Dustin and I are just collectors like you, just talking. We're all talking to each other, really. I mean, and that's all we are. We're having fun just talking to each other. And so it's good to stay positive. So thank you for the reminder.
All right, we're heading into the new year 2025. We've got a few topics on deck. We're going to start with announcements from Beckett, and then we're going to roll into a set that DPZ actually made a purchase here recently, kind of talk about the why behind that. And then we're going to finish out with awful awesome. What was awful awesome about 2024 hobby stuff, and then kind of thoughts heading into 2025. So we'll lead off first with Beckett grading. There was a recent announcement here. When this actually airs, it'll be a couple days ago. But what happened, DPZ? Talk us through it and just kind of your overall thoughts there.
Well, it looks like Beckett, they locked up all their authenticators, like a team of really talented, tons of experience authentication experts for Beckett, which is, they still hold a lot of confidence in the hobby with authentication. I know everybody, let's be honest, every grading company authenticates and slabs fake car. It just happens, okay? It's kind of part of the business. It's like anything else. When you get into a certain business, there's risks that are involved. So I think we need to kind of put aside the whole, hey, well, Beckett does this a lot, but PSA does it as well. SGC, they all do it. You're gonna make those mistakes, but Beckett does have a brand name that's really, really strong, stronger than any brand in the hobby. So you take that, you add in a new parent company coming in, strengthening their brand by reaching a long-term extension with all of that authentication team. This was brought to us by Collect. Ben Burrows reported it actually today from the Collect group. Really great story. If you want, go check it out. It's showing on the video now if you're watching on YouTube. But that list of those group, they include Steve Grad. Everybody knows who he is. Brian Sobrero, Zach Rulo, Charlie Price, and Larry Studebaker, and they all have nearly 100 years of collective authentication experience. This is a big deal, and in my opinion, this is why this is a big deal. What this does is a step in a direction for Beckett, a step in a direction to becoming relevant once more. And what makes you relevant as a grading company is trust, brand trust. Are you trusting that the product you're buying is graded to the standard that which another company is grading it, and is it authentic? So the key word is authentic. The authentication team. That's a big deal because grades are subjective. They're opinions. They've always been opinions. Some people have different opinions on different days. All of us know what it's like to submit to PSA and get 2 PSA 10s you didn't think you would get, and then a bunch of PSA 6s. For some reason, PSA 6. I don't know why PSA 6, but it seems like the number where they're like, well, I don't know what this is. It's a 6. Grades are opinions. So we're going to go back and forth as a hobby forever about that, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think it's healthy. It's good that we debate that, right? That's kind of part of it. I think with proper authentication, comfort, and trust, you're going to see, I believe, an evening. I think that Beckett will overtake SGC, and they will become the second in line to PSA, because here's why. Wow. SGC is just PSA. So you can't really say SGC, PSA, CGC, Beckett, because SGC and PSA are just one. So when I say second, that means second to both of those companies, but more or less and more importantly, second to PSA, because I don't think people are going to put anything other than vintage cards in an SGC slab now. You might buy something from back in the 50s or 40s or vintage and still feel very confident in SGC. I believe it's one of the reasons why PSA acquired them, to acquire that talent. Once again, Beckett is keeping their talent. They're going to be separate from Fanatics, from what it appears, and separate from PSA, which I believe is healthy for the market, healthy for the hobby. And I think you gain that trust back on trusting that the card that's in that case is the real deal. The autograph is the real deal. Grading after that, it becomes it's a subjective thing. Everybody's going to go back and forth on that. I think that once they do this, they're going to probably strengthen their become more rigid in their grading standards if they aren't already, because they know that's what they're going to need to do to win over the hobby for that next level, right? And to get even closer to PSA. If Beckett can do this, this is what's going to be great for the hobby. This is going to create healthy competition. It's going to make everybody who has those Beckett 9.5 gem knits, whether they're true gem mints and all that other happy crap, they're going to still be happy with the fact that they've got that card. It's going to still mean something. It's going to close the gap in the price. And I think that's a healthy thing, because I don't think it's good for the hobby to have PSA 10 sell for, X amount more than a BGS 9.5. I think if you're a BGS 10 Pristine or Black Label holder, this is really good news for you, because now you have a product that actually beats PSA 10s. And if Beckett can do this, that will remain the same, because I still think the Pristines and the Black Labels are strong. They still hold that strength. If they can do this and they can gain back the trust of the hobby, those two become better than a PSA 10, which I still think is great, because they're obviously holding tight to the 10s and the Black Labels. They don't hand them out. Now, if they can strengthen that from a BGS 9.5 down, great. The big gaffe they made is when they said they're going to retract all the BGS 9.5s. We're going to have a new grading scale, and then backed away after they realized it was a bad move. To me, that was the worst thing they could have done. They could have done everything else right and still did that, and it would have destroyed them. So that was the big death nail for them. They have to overcome that. The only way to do that is time and good moves, starting with one like this.
Interesting. All right. Strong word, strong take. I do agree, though. You're right. I mean, when Nat Turner and collectors, when they bought SGC, he specifically referenced their grading talent. A big reason why they purchased SGC is specifically, it's just not every day you run into folks that have been grading cards for 20 plus years and have brand recognition and that sort of a thing. And I have to believe, and of course I'm speculating, that PSA and maybe SGC were circling BGS and maybe trying to pull these guys away, because I mean that's essentially what happened with CGC. When CGC started grading sports cards going back a couple of years, they pulled a couple of Beckett's top graders, and that's really what gave them some confidence behind that brand for sports cards. It hasn't picked up the way I think that they wanted it to. On the sports card side, they grade a ton of TCG, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Magic the Gathering stuff, but on the sports card side, it hasn't picked up the way they would have liked. But that was a move that they intentionally made to gain credibility. If you don't have grading talent, then what's the difference between you and just anybody that starts a grading company? So this, I agree with you. This is a very interesting move. It's something that Beckett kind of had to do. And I guess it kind of boils down to, is this going to remain kind of under the current leadership? We've talked about the new parent company with Collectivus Holdings. Are they going to package this thing up and sell it off to Nat Turner anyway, at some point, or sell it off to Fanatics, or sell it off to, to somebody down the line? Or is it going to just kind of remain in this kind of little world? And are they going to, kind of work through and just try to make Beckett great again, if you will? 250 mil, and they've spent some of it on keeping their graders.
Correct. I think we talk about this in the finance industry or in the banking industry. We really want to see adults in the room making decisions when it comes to the Fed, when they meet to decide rate cuts. I mean, we want to make sure there's adults in the room making proper decisions. People not being emotional, people not being driven by politics. That's what you want. You want that separation, right? So if I'm a collector, I want adults in the room making decisions for a Beckett. I want adults in the room making decisions for the direction the Beckett should go in. I think if PSA and Nat and collectors eventually purchase Beckett, that's a terrible thing for the hobby. That just creates this massive conglomerate. I mean, I'm nothing against Nat. I love what he does and everything about what he stands for and the business. He's great. But I just don't think that's good for the hobby. I think that would make it would, now you're consolidating everybody. It doesn't give you that unique feel. It's like if it's like Pepsi and Coke becoming one company. Well, what's the point? I mean, now you've taken away that opportunity to choose the healthy competition that creates a better product for the end user. So I believe
would you rather it be, would you rather collectors or fanatics or maybe, see, because the thing is, I would rather, it's kind of weird. I would rather have either collectors or fanatics than just some random outside company with big pockets that's not in this hobby, that doesn't know anything about it. I would almost rather have Nat Turner, who I totally understand your point. I completely get it. I guess if the confidence I would have if Nat Turner bought it would be, okay, this company is going to stay around. It's going to be well funded. It's going to be worked, basically like it'll stay a part of the ecosystem. Whereas if an outside company comes in and buys it, is it just going to be kind of like sold for parts, or, just kind of like, not invested in, and just kind of like, hey, we own this as part of our portfolio. This is cool. This is card grading, and not really a focus. Like if it's part of just a much larger conglomerate.
I still don't think it's a good idea. I still don't think it's good for the hobby. I don't think it's healthy for the hobby, because yes, maybe it stays around, maybe it still stays somewhat relevant, but it's now going to be the third tier of PSA's offering. It's like, so a company.
You'd rather be like a Fanatics competing against
maybe Fanatics, but even so, I'd like to steer clear of any sort of opportunity from a monopolistic appearance, because the transparency is never really going to help you, because no matter what, everybody's going to say, well, you own all this, you got all this, you can control this, you can control that. When it's separated, it creates at least an opportunity for us to believe that things are being done, not just in a vacuum. Okay. And one of the things that's important to think about and remember when you talk about,
it would be an interesting hobby company is eBay. If eBay, like pulled it into their circle, that would be kind of, I know that some people will be like, that's a huge company and I don't like another big company, but it is kind of a company that does a lot of different things. They're operating collectibles, but they're doing a lot of stuff.
I think you need to have, okay. So another thing I was going to say is it's important to remember that right now in the hobby, it's not ripe like it was in 21 and 22, where you have a lot of this entrepreneurial money, this venture capitalistic money coming in going, hey, I want to invest in this space. It looks hot. It's not like Bitcoin and then Bitcoin dies off and then Bitcoin again. This is a hobby now that's maturing.
DPZ, stay tuned. If interest rates start moving downward and we get some slush money coming back through, you never know. We might have some more. Hey,
I don't think that's going to happen again.
If it gets cheap again, if rates go down, you don't think that money's going to come back in?
No, the only reason that happened was because there was a perfect storm of people having the extra income, a lot of opportunities to spend money we didn't have. There's something that happened. It was like a cosmic event that allowed people to flood the money and flood, this hobby space. Because I was getting back into it in late 2019, well before COVID. And it's sort of like we kind of all hit that age where we're starting to get back into it. And then COVID happened. Now we got all this extra money, time, energy, and everybody kind of dove right back in. And there was sort of a swell of that coming even before that. In 17, 18, 19, you can look at the charts, the people were starting to get back into it, right? I think there's been a maturing.
But the money spend, so the part that's different is, base Prism PSA 10 Lucas are not $2,000 like that. Like the market has normalized to where the expensive cards are actually rare cards. They're not just kind of like, like everything is expensive the way it was in 2021. But if we look at the spend, I think it was a Card Ladder chart that I saw where if you compare like the 2021 and 2024 spend or whatever, it was actually pretty similar monthly. It's just obviously it's spread out, in different ways. I think there's actually more participants today in the hobby overall than there was in 2021. Now, are they spending as much money on individual? Like I don't know about that, but as far as just the number of participants, I think that is up. But I'm only saying that because if you're a company that's looking at kind of coming into this. And money gets cheap again. If it does get cheap to where rates go down, and all of a sudden you've got capital moving around again more freely. We really haven't had that for the last 18 months to 2 years. We've had interest rate hikes. Companies have been a little bit more conservative. And I'm not saying I agree. Like it could actually be the opposite of that, where people are like, yeah, trading cards, I'm good. Like I don't want to really mess with that space. But I wouldn't be shocked if there was more companies that are larger companies, not necessarily new, smaller entrepreneurs that are trying to start a company, but I could see large companies dabbling. Anyway, go ahead.
But the only reason large companies are going to dabble is if they see it being scalable. And I don't think the hobby is scalable anymore. Not to what we thought it was. I think, because here's the problem. If you're smart and you come in, you look at this company unbiased without having any experience we've had, you see a modern product that's just like, it's like a lottery system, and you see breakers that are the only way to make money. So a collector, we're all doing the same thing. We've all refined our views, and we're buying, we're consolidating, and we're buying the cards we really want from an era where the cards are now appreciating in value because people, like all of us, are kind of going to those cards. We're retreating back, flight to quality versus quantity. And for a business to want to get involved in the hobby and for it to be prosperous, you need a lot of volume. People have to keep pumping out the volume. Breakers are buying all the new product, not collectors, because they're like, this is too expensive. We don't need it. I don't want it. And there's a disinterest in it. So I feel like you're not going to be able to get enough of that interest. And the new people coming into the hobby are, maybe they love the new cards or the new prospects and all that. But I just don't think there's enough volume there for it to be scalable for a company to want to come in and invest money. I think if rates go down, if people have extra money, they're going to be pooling their resources to go after the cards that they really, really want now, because we've had like 4 or 5 years of learning. Myself as an example, I'm not going to go after any of the stuff that I was buying when I first got in, because now I'm like, okay, I'd rather just pool my money and get this one card versus having all of these cards. Case in point, I just completed that 1987 Fleer PSA 9 set. And this is me, a collector. Nice. And I got it done. Now I'm just like, okay, now I need to sell it because I'm done. I completed it. I'm just, I love it. It's really cool, but it's like, I'd rather take the money I can get from that and go buy one really cool card that I really want now, because I can't just keep spending the money, because my tastes have matured so much and I've narrowed my vision and my focus down on what I want to collect, that it's harder to get those kinds of cards. A $100 card doesn't do it for me. And that's just me. It's not being snobby, but that's just where I'm at.
That's a perfect move into our next topic. So we've got, you talked about this off air a little bit. It's 95, 96 select. Go ahead, take it away. You found the set. Now, this is not a brand new set to you. This is something that you've been aware of, but explain the story of what happened here.
So if you're not familiar with 1995 and 1996, I won't talk about 7 and 8 and all that with the totally select, but select certified. It was by Pinnacle, the brand's Pinnacle. 95, they introduced, there's this Mirror Gold product, Mirror Gold parallel for baseball and football, and I think hockey as well. We don't have basketball, so the crossover isn't there. It's why it hasn't matured the way you'd think it would, because traditionally, if it's like a PMG or Rubies, if you have the basketball, football, and baseball offerings, that's where your sweet spot is, because you want all the sports covered. It tends to get you more, and basketball really pushes the envelope, really drives the needle on these 90s cards and inserts and all of that. If you don't have if basketball can just have its own and it's just basketball and it'll still be fine. Whereas if it's just a baseball product, it's going to suffer. If it's just a football product, it's really going to suffer. You got to have at least 1 or 2 sports. So 95 and 96 select certified by Pinnacle. 95 had the Mirror Gold. I'm not too versed on 95. I know that I have a handful of raw 95 select certified, like Emmitt Smith, Drew Bledsoe, Barry Sanders, Troy Aikman, John Elway, the Mirror Golds. I mean, they were very cheap to buy. I actually bought them graded and cracked them out and have them in one touches because they look so cool, especially with a pristine, beautiful new one touch where you can really see they pop better than they pop better than the 96s. The 96s are are much more valuable for a reason I'll explain in a minute. But for like a fun value play to still collect a very, very cool, aesthetically pleasing card of the players that a lot of us love growing up, you can go to that 95 select certified and get a Mirror Gold. There's no stated print run. Maybe some folks in the comments, if know more about it, can elaborate on that. But I don't know much about it, but I just know they're much easier to obtain. They're way cheaper. For less than $100, you can get a mint or higher graded copy of a lot of these players. And they're fun to collect. My son has a bunch of them in his box. He just loves them. A lot of fun. Now, when it comes to buying something that's more sought after from the collected community, 96 is where you want to go. And 96 select certified was the first year you sort of had a rainbow you can go after and try to collect, right? You got, I'm going off the top of my head here. if you really want to learn more about this product, I recommend the Precious Metal Gents episode. They had one in the very beginning of when they started. They walked through 96 Select Certified. Tons of information. Excuse me, tons of information there. Definitely head there to check out and verify all the stuff I'm telling you. But 96 Select Certified had you have your base version. There's like 5 or 6 cards per pack. I think 12 packs per box, and they had stated print runs. They weren't stamped, serial numbered, but it's sort of been accepted across the hobby that 96 was pretty authentic. We have like the president of Pinnacle stating such. A lot of people say there's no backdoor copies. You're pretty secure. And after all these years, so the boom and everything like that, you can kind of see it with the grading. There ain't many out there. Okay. A lot of them don't sell very often, especially of the major players, the bigger players of the era. So football, you starts with, you got a mirror, you have the base version, then you have a mirror blue, a mirror red, and a mirror gold. And there's artist proofs, which are out of 500, I believe. And then there's like premium stock, but like the mirror golds of the chase. It's like pretty clear. The mirror golds of the chase. The mirror blues are pretty great with a color match. The mirror reds are pretty cool with color matches, like the mirror red in football, Jerry Rice. I think it's out of, I'm not going to say 90. I think it's less than 90 because I think the blues are reds are out of 90, I believe. But that sells for more.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, you can look it up. But there's different colors. It was like the first time you can try to collect a rainbow in the hobby, right? So 96 Select Certified. The only drawback is they don't have basketball, right? So that's why a lot of people sometimes they don't think about this product. But there's still a lot of opportunity out there to pick up a good card, maybe a PSA 8 you could probably get for a decent price. But people are starting to pick up on that on 96, and they're asking for a little bit more.
I'll see if I can share screen just to kind of give an idea.
Yeah, do it.
I found the reds right here. So you've got, as an example, Frank Sanders to 90, 999.
Out of 90, yep. There you go.
And look, these are, I mean, look, if you just wanted to see one, you know, these are 10,
they're
15
gorgeous
bucks.
Cards.
They're numbered. Hockey version.
There's hockey too, and they're not serial number stamped. They're stated print runs. There's odds per pack or per box. They didn't print a lot of them. I think there's like, again, go to that Precious Metal Gents episode to see the actual. I think basketball or football has less than baseball. Baseball had a bigger set. I think baseball's 155, football's 130. Not many, right? And then you have all of the mirror. They also have just red. Now the mirror gold, mirror red, mirror blue almost have a refractor type finish on the football. Baseball is more of a matte finish with the gold and all that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of places to play around here, guys. That's the point, is that you can really have fun. And that's, and now the big cards are big cards and they cost some serious money. The Derek Jeter, I think a Derek Jeter, there's a sale and it's like a $250,000 sale in 2017. Ooh. 2017. Oh, wow. So this set was appreciated well before the boom, right? This was a collector set from the very, very beginning. Everybody wanted them. They would come in and trade their whole collections or try to trade their whole collections to get like a mirror gold of a player. So,
and what is the gold out of again?
Gold's out of 9. The gold's out of 35 for football, out of 30 for baseball.
Okay.
And in my opinion, the golds on the football look better than the golds on the baseball. But then football, you know, Barry Sanders, Jerry Rice, you're bigger. Those are probably your two big. Those are the big ones. But the Jerry Rice gold should do really well, but the red actually outperforms the gold, I think, as of Sanders,
now. He's always been popular, but he's definitely solidified himself as kind of like that. For football, he's like the 90s guy, you know, for a lot of these. It feels like, anyway. I know
he's
Jerry
separating himself. Yeah.
I know Rice does big numbers, but Barry Sanders just has, it feels like there's a pretty deep collector base for a lot of his stuff.
He's just got this special, 10 years, 10 all pro. He did it for so long. He was the best every single year he did it. There wasn't even any, he never fell off.
It's not necessarily like, because I know a variety of different guys that have Barry Sanders cards. They're not necessarily like nice ones, like what you're talking about, but they're not necessarily like Barry Sanders player collectors where they're just collecting, you know, all Barry Sanders stuff. But what it is there's just, everyone's got just great feelings and nostalgia about Sanders from watching him play. I think there's people that are like, you know what? I want like one or two nice Barry cards. and that's how it ends up happening. It might be
Oh yeah,
collectors, but they're like, hell, if I'm gonna buy a 90s insert football card, it needs to be Barry Sanders.
and you just beat me to it, brother. And that's kind of where I was at. I was like, I want a really good football card. And I've had a few in the past, and I've sold them, and then usually the '80s junk wax stuff. I wanted a really cool football card from like the '90s, like one of those really cool sets, PMG Rubies, or something like that, Flair Showcase Legacy, something really cool, because I just love those sets. And I believe long term, those are nice ones to. So if you're going to spend a little bit of money, those are the ones you want to maybe target, right? And so Barry Sanders was definitely on that list. He's top of the list. And the Select Certified 95 Gold, Mirror Gold, was always a card I wanted. It just never sells. At PSA 8, it sold a couple times, but at PSA 9 or higher, which is what I was trying to target, you never see it. And one came up in the weekly auction this last week, and I just had to try to go after it. Problem is, I'm like, well, now I have to sell something to get it, because I'm just not just going to spend the money, right? We talked about that before. I got to sell something to buy. So
is 95 the first year for it?
95 is the first year for it, and then 96 is, and I had a 95 Barry PSA 9 Mirror Gold, and I think it sold for like a couple $100. And then I had and so I've always wanted the 96 though, just because that's the one.
96 is more sought after than 95
because it has a stated print run of 35, and everybody is kind of recognizes that. The 95s they don't, and there's even the later years it gets a little squishy, so you don't really know. And I think, if anything, like we talked about in the hobby, trust is everything. The group think, the tribal knowledge, that's what drives the hobby. And so the 30 out of 35 is the card you kind of want. So I won it, thankfully. But then I had to sell my MJ All-Star. I even talked about not selling last episode to pay for it, to fund it, because that's just how it's got to go. I think it'll be around the same. It'll be a wash. I believe long term it's better to have that than that. But it does bring up an interesting topic about how, wow, I just bought this card like not even like 3 weeks ago, and now I have to move it instantly. And this is the second time I moved that card. And it came down to going, okay, which one do I want more, right? Because I have to pick. And what do you use to reason for that? And this kind of goes back to what we're talking about earlier. If all rates go down and there's more money, I don't think a bunch of people are going to go out and buy a bunch of new boxes and rip them. I think they're going to go start targeting these kind of cards of these kind of players that they really want, that they're like, I just really want that card, and I'd rather pool my resources and go get that. And that's not as attractive to we're collectors now. We're putting together, curating a collection versus just buying a bunch of stuff hoping to hit a big card and then sell it on eBay.
Yeah, it gets tough too when, just exactly what you said, like that's a card that you haven't seen sold in what, years or something. Like it doesn't pop
couple
up.
Years, yeah.
Couple of years. So, and that's what'll happen is you're like, okay, I'm all set. I've got my game plan in place. I've got the cards I want. And then, as you said, like all of a sudden there's something that pops up that you haven't seen in a couple of years, especially when it's at auction. Because what if the card sells for $3,000 and you're like, no, I've got my collection. I'm good. You're going to be like, damn it, this thing sold for $3,000 or $4,000 when you would have gone up to $6,000, let's say, and that's always the issue. Because then you end up getting into the game and you're like, all right, well, there's 24 hours left and I'm still kind of, it's, wherever it's sitting at, I'm still in it. And that's always kind of the tricky part. You might win it. You might have gotten blown out. You might have, offered, whatever, bid 6,000 and then thing sells for 10. Like, who knows? You just never know how it's going to go sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, the good news with that said is you have to think about with these kind of cards, like you do your due diligence, right? There's two big players in football. The football has a bit better, it has a little bit better aesthetic because it just pops more. You look at what's the pop? It's a PSA 6 and a PSA, or it's a pop 6 and a PSA 9. Okay, so now I have one 10s? Of those 6. What's that?
Are there any 10s?
There's like 2 10s.
Okay,
2 10s, so I think. 2 or 3 10s. So there's only a handful that could sell that can either go below or higher. And you have 5 people, at least with my particular grade, that could decide to sell that card. But that eventually runs out if I want to keep it. So there's only so much further down it could go. You feel a little bit safer versus having like 400 in a pop, where if it starts going up, what happens every time a card starts making more money and selling and pushing records, and you see the card letter thing come out, go, whoa, record. Everybody goes and go, I got that card, and they send it in and they sell it right away, and then it sells for just a little bit less, and then it sells for a little bit less, and everybody floods in and nobody knows the other person's doing it, and the next thing you know, down back it goes. And I mean, it's just common economics. The supply and demand just sort of meets it. And people do that all the time. And that's been happening for a long time. Whereas if you have a card that has very small pop, and you kind of have to have that happy medium where there's still enough interest for the card. There's a few of them out there where people can get it. Like these pop one of ones, pop two, pop three. Those are tough because all it takes is two people. And you might not see that card sell for years. And you'll never really know its value other than what you paid for it. And sometimes you don't even tell people what you pay for it because it's a private deal. But those pop 5, pop 6, pop 10 cards, you know, some of them might pop up. So the card I just bought, someone might have one and went, I paid $400 for that card 5 years ago or 6, 7, or 10 years ago. I'm going to sell it now and see if I can get more than what it just got. And maybe it does creep higher, but then I think that next copy goes down. And then the next copy, because that person goes, hey, that goes down. And then maybe worse yet case, the last copy, it sells for less than what I paid for it. See? So you kind of have that little mountain. And that's how it works.
It's tough to know if it's going to go that way, though. You never know. Like it
You
could,
don't know.
like you could have bought yours for 6, one sells for 4, and the next one sells for 7. You know, like you just never know, you know, how it's going to go because there's so many of these that pop up too. There's people too that just miss the auctions, you know, and then they're like, holy hell, like I can't believe I didn't, you know,
I almost missed it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There could be a buyer for those cards because I think a lot of the thought is like, oh, well, you know, I was the last bidder or I was the winner. Who was second and who was third? But the truth is there might have been 25 people that were ready to spend 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that just didn't even see it. You know,
I lost out on the 8. I lost out on the PSA 8 earlier this year. I went after that and I lost it in the auction. So I was like, I got to get another one. And they haven't sold it. And then the 9 comes up. I'm like, well, that'd be even better yet. But man, how much is this going to cost? But you kind of get, and then you get fall in love with the card. And then you're like, I got to have it. You know, it's like, but yeah, you don't worry about it too much because, you know, obviously I've had some time to really love the card and the player for that card. So it gets a bit easier because you're like, well, now I know I'm going to want it. And I know it might sell a couple times and it might sell for less. Who knows? But you look at the history of that card and of a lot of these cards, they don't sell a lot. It means people want to have them. They want to keep them. They don't want to sell them. And they might say, yeah, I can make a bunch of money selling that card. I have a handful of cards where I can make a lot of money. I've had offers on 2 or 3 of my cards recently. I'm like, gosh, I should probably just sell this. But I'm like, I'll never get it back. And I love this card. So I go, no, I'm going to hang on to it. Right. There's people making those types of decisions every day, I imagine. So the desirability of the card factors in a big way. And you kind of want to have a great card. So it's the only football card I have. I believe it's the only football card I have. So at least bigger card. And I'm happy to have it. I'm grateful to have it. And it's one I'll probably tuck away and I'll sell a couple cards before I even sell that one. Maybe even a Griffey or 2 before I sell that one, because I just feel like that's a really cool Barry card. And Barry Sanders he's a very special guy. And he was important to me growing up because I was obsessed with him as a kid. We all were. We all loved Barry. I mean,
he's like the football equivalent. He's the football equivalent of Griffey.
He is. He's like, cool. He's got this like
likable, humble guy.
Super cool. Yeah. And I mean the 89 score was never that exciting to look at, but we also knew the 89 score was the cool card to get. So we're like, I know how you feel about 89 score, my friend. But yeah. It's a good topic.
Yeah, that's good. All right, let's shift over to our last topic, and it's awesome 2024. What is something, I guess, that you really enjoyed about 2024 in the collecting hobby? And then what's something that you're like, you know, I'm happy to leave that behind in 2024? Is there anything that sticks out? And it's okay if actually, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. So however you want to answer it.
I think what's been great about 2024 is I've gotten to know a lot more people in the hobby space. You know, I'm interacting. I don't have a ton of followers on Instagram, and nor am I worried about that. But there's a lot of great people that I can interact with on Instagram, and I don't have as many collectors I can interact with in person where I live up here in Seattle. But just doing these shows with you and getting to know a lot more people in the hobby. It's a small world if you really think about it, especially the folks that are really trying to collect cards and grow and learn and get better. I've learned a lot from a lot of great people, and that has been something that that was the best part of 2024 is growing and learning and getting to know a lot more people in the hobby space. What I'm happy to leave behind is I'm happy to see the drama go away, even though we kind of joke about how the drama makes things interesting. I think the hobby is maturing, and I think you have a lot of people that are just like the post office people just know me. I just sent off that card to go, oh, hey, how you guys going, Dennis? I'm here all the time buying and selling cards and sending them off. And And it's just kind of part of what I do and who I am. And everybody who even knew me from before, and I was a musician guy, they're like, that you're the card guy now. And it's like, well, but I love cards, and the community around it has been really fun. So I'm enjoying how that works, how the community works together with the camaraderie and the education, and people actually getting excited for one another when they gain a card that they really want. People have true joy for another person. I mean, you don't see that very often in anywhere else in the world, where someone's truly happy for somebody gaining something. You see someone has been chasing this card for, and they get it. You're like, that's so great. You're excited for them in a real, true, authentic way. And I think that's a healthy thing, and it's a great thing. But the drama, I think it's dying out, because I think a lot of the bad actors and the people that were just in here to cause problems are realizing this is a mature base now. You're not going to pass things up on people. You have a lot of content out there, even though we're asking what content it is yesterday or the last episode. There are a handful of shows that are out there educating people on what to look out for. There's Instagram sites saying what here's what you gotta avoid, and people aren't, they're kind of figuring it out, like the new modern stuff can be fun to collect if you do it right. But you got to remember, the big stuff is just it's a lottery system, and it's just like a scratch ticket. But hey, we love lotteries. We love to scratch the tickets. It's exciting. People love to gamble. It's what people love to do. I think that's a big part of the hobby, but the mature part of the hobby is super healthy. It's rooted in a very healthy way, with a lot of really good people making good choices, helping one another out. And the good news is, once you get mature into that hobby, if you need to sell something, you can sell stuff, and there's going to be people that want it, and they'll pay for it. And, you can move it if you need to. But it's just, the only reason I was able to get to where I'm at is because I was listening and learning from people that knew more than I did. And I would constantly listen and learn, and you're never the smartest guy. And even though we're on here talking on these shows, I'm no better and no different than anybody who listens to this show, because I go and listen to other people's shows too. And I learn from other people. And I try to bring it here, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but it's still, we're all on the same playing field. So that's right. The fun part about this. Nobody is bigger. And if you think you are, I don't know who you're fooling, but nobody is more important than the next guy. And that's what we always got to remember. So those are my 2024 great things. Keep going, keep growing, leave behind.
I agree. It feels like over the last 12 months, I could be wrong too. It could be like I'm in like my own world, in my own little zone, but it really feels like when someone buys a card that's significant, like that Barry card that you're just talking about, that there's actually, of course there's, store value, long-term upside potential for it. But there's also just, it does feel like there's more of just people that have been chasing for a particular card for a long time, or it's been on the want list for a long time, and they're able to consolidate into it or whatever. And they just really enjoy that they finally, got that card that they've been chasing after, as opposed to, this card's going to 10X, over the next year or something like that. It's like that sort of talk is, it's pretty much gone, I think. And it is more of I call it collector mindset, but I think that there is speculation. Obviously, it's speculation. If you're spending $5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand, and we all have different means or whatever, but even if you're Jeff Bezos, you spend 50 grand on something, you're probably like, okay, well, it's a significant amount of money for that item, and so there's speculation that's tied into it. And that kind of goes without saying, but it does feel like there's a lot of folks that are just happy to, like, joy of ownership, a lot more joy of ownership, and that's pretty cool.
Well, I found it's fun because if you just focus on one thing, like just 90s cards, when you listen to content that talks about 90s cards, you feel good. It's like, I'm part of this club. I have a vested interest in this kind of group, these people that collect these types of cards. Maybe you're in an Instagram group, or you're in your collector group for a player or a team. You have a vested interest there. I kind of spread it out a little bit, which makes it fun, because now when we talk about, really cool, I try to get a card from each of the really great sets. I don't need all of the cards from that set. I don't need a ton of them. I just want to have one. I want to have one really cool flare show. I want to one this, one that. I don't have a Rubies anymore. I don't have a PMG, but I have a couple of the other cards that I'm super stoked to have. And I know, you know what? You don't get to have everything in life. That's just life. That's how it works. But the stuff I do have, I have enough to pray over, and I'm be very grateful for. But that's yeah, you're right. It really creates this like feeling, right? So spreading it out where you have a really cool card from here or that. So then when you're like talking with your collector friends, like, oh yeah, I got like a Topps Dynasty. I'll only have a couple when it's all said and done, but the couple I have will be really cool and I'll enjoy them. And when we talk about, baseball players, the baseball season comes around, I have my Julio, I can still root it in my guy. Right. Or I have like a, Francisco Lindor, and I can kind of watch him and get excited or whatever. And you didn't spend a fortune to get it. You just spent less than $1,000 to get a card. And I know it's a lot of money still, but you can get that and grade it and have it and go, all right, if things work out, I can sell it, I guess. But maybe I just hang on to this guy. He's just the guy I kind of ride with, right? It's kind of fun, there's something about that. So when you're listening to content about baseball cards and about prospect, it gets exciting because you have a dog in the race, right? You have your dog in the fight, it makes it fun. And so I think that's important, is to expand your hobby experience. So then when you're collecting, you can appreciate all the different groups and all the different things they're doing, not just the stuff you're doing, and that you're focused on, that where your heart and passion is, other things too. And, I think it's hard now. I'm down to the point where it's going to be really hard to move anything to pay for something else I want. And I think that is probably my biggest concern for 2025, is how in the world can I afford the cards I want?
Yeah. If something new comes up that you want over, what you have. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I want one right now. There's the 98, 99 or 98 platinum medallion out of 100 Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 9, one of the most beautiful cards. Wow. I had an SGC 8 for a while, but I wanted a PSA 9 or 10. It's at auction right now. I'd love that card. I would get that in a heartbeat if I didn't just get the berry. But it's probably going to sell for 6, 7. I can't afford that. I can't go get that now. Although it'd be wonderful to add to my collection of like really cool Griffey cards, but I can't afford it. So it would be irresponsible for me to try to go get it without something I know I could sell. You know what I mean? So that's the challenge, is when those things happen and you don't have the means. That's the biggest challenge. You just got to restrain yourself and go, no, I don't have enough for that. I have to be able to pay for it with a card. And if I can't do that, then, you have to reevaluate what you like and enjoy, so that you're not just having to spend a ton of money on something to enjoy it. That's probably a whole nother conversation, but I digress.
All right, DPZ. Well, I feel like this was a strong episode. This was a good one. You had some nice little hot takes on there about Beckett there in the beginning. Trained us up a little bit on Select, and that was good. And we talked through 2024, and now we're we are in 2025. And so hopefully it's a great year ahead.
You too, brother. And you guys obviously keep going, checking out these daily episodes from our boy here, Dustin. He's always bringing the current news. He's the CNN, the 24-hour CNN news of
Lord, not CNN. Jeez.
Okay, not CNN. Yeah, we have to worry about them anymore. We can't say that stuff anymore, right?
Independent news station. Let's just go independent news station.
Yeah, independent news station. He's doing a really good job of that. And again, if you want to learn a lot more about 95, 96 Select and more, again, check out that Precious Metal Gents episode. They do a terrific job laying it out. And try to, like I said, I put myself to the test. I'm like, let me go try to find some great content out there where I can learn more about sets and cards and stuff like that. And it kind of had me searching around. So that was kind of a fun activity to do that. And kind of had me going back to that particular, those guys, and talking about Select Certified, to learn a little bit more about the cards and stuff like that, and gain all that wisdom. So keep doing that, keep growing, keep learning, keep treating each other with a lot of respect and love. Let's just keep doing that into the new year, and enjoy ourselves and have a good time.
All right, DPZ, we'll talk to you later, guys. Until next time, see you next week.
Take care.